wait for it. Just gonna let this flow here. Are we done? Okay. Yeah, that was one encounter the night we played. And I didn't even plan for it. Hey everybody, this is DM Mike. Yep, and this is Campaign Diary number 12. I think I got it right this time. Number 12 of Hoard the Dragon Queen. We just played over Thanksgiving weekend. We played that Friday night. We played for a good 3.5, almost 4 hours. I think there was even a motivation to keep going, but we had to come to an end. There was just a lot more to do. And there was a lot more to do because of just player decisions, especially one player's decision. Not to point any fingers. But yeah, so if you watched the last one, you know where we left off. The players had encountered some bullywugs. They hadn't quite made a move yet, but everybody had spotted everybody, and there was a moment of hesitation. Well, our thief cut loose, and we had a fight. We had a fight with a small little bullywug encampment right there in the Mirror of Dead Men. Yeah, the swamp, the Mirror of Dead Men. And of course, they wiped the floor with them. There were a couple times people got hit. I think our druid, Althea, did drop during that encounter. She was surrounded by 3 bullywugs, and they just speared her left and right and dropped her pretty quickly. But she was quickly resurrected by, she didn't die, like, not resurrected, but, you know, brought back up, stabilized, whatever, by our cleric during the combat. But they did a pretty good job of wiping the floor with them. And so this is kind of one of those, it was a random encounter that you can pull out of the book. I think when they enter the mirror, you got like 6 or 7 you can look at, maybe 8, probably 8, 6 to 8, that you can look at in the book that kind of set up these things, set up these random encounters. Now, I didn't roll for this. You can roll for that. I planned that I want this to happen, possibly this, possibly that. Like, I think you can have some concrete interactions, but other times you want some things to be random, just so people, you know, they could stumble upon them or they can avoid them, things like that, right? I mean, I think it's just kind of, it gets down in kind of game design, like how you put things out on the map and where they're at and how they're located and the options players have. So I went through and I picked 2, maybe 3 at the most of encounters that I wanted to have. And one of those encounters was crocodiles. We're going to get into this, but crocodiles that were, you know, I felt were natural to the swamp. They needed to be there. You can't go into a swamp and not have crocodiles, right? So they were kind of randomly put in the swamp. And I'll put a little video here, maybe up in the corner here. Maybe I'll just like fill the whole screen with it. Of some of the tabletop simulator maps I've been using. This one here, of course, is the Bullywug encampment that you can see where they had the combat that I created for this chapter in Tabletop Simulator. And then, of course, they had spent some time at this camp after they killed everybody. Spent the time at the camp, and they stayed overnight. I had them roll a 1d12 for a random encounter, and they rolled really, really low, so nothing happened that night. So they took shifts. And one thing I do when people are, or characters are having a, you know, they're camping out in wherever, wilderness, swamp, castle, abandoned castle, whatever, it doesn't matter. You cannot sleep in armor. That's just something I've put on there. You just can't sleep in armor. It's not comfortable to sleep in plate mail. You're not going to get a full night's rest. It's going to be uncomfortable. So I made it clear that whoever is watching, yes, you can be in armor, but if you are sleeping and you're trying to get 8 hours full rest, you need to be out of your armor and to be aware that it takes like, you know, a few minutes to put armor back on, which translates to a lot of rounds in combat. So let's just keep that in mind. Right. So it's just something I do. I think it's just, you know, everybody has their little sprinkles and flavors of what they bring to their adventures. I try not to do too many things. That's the problem, I think. Well, not the problem. That's the what's the word I'm looking for? The oh man, what is it? The temptation. There we go. The temptation of D&D is to continue to add rules, to continue to add custom stuff over and over again, right? And then suddenly, you might as well be playing Pathfinder. Ooh. I mean, you start bringing in so much homebrew stuff that the game almost naturally, organically becomes complicated. So I try to avoid a lot of that stuff. I put little things here and there, and I try to cap myself. So this is a long-winded rant, probably a soapbox issue, because I know everybody's tables are different, players are different, whatnot. But I just, that's my little thing. When you're camping, can't be in armor, okay? So nothing happened the night that they camped. There were some stirrings in the swamp. There was a huge trail left that morning. The ranger, the druid, was the last one on watch, and she kind of pulled the ranger over, say she heard something overnight, and there was a slithering of some kind, something huge, and they went outside the camp, and they spotted it. It was like this huge ravine almost that had been plowed through by almost like a giant worm or something had come through, and there is a reason for that, and that'll come much later, if at all. It may not. It depends on what the players do. But there's a reason for that. But they spotted that. And so they made the decision on what they wanted to do after the Bullywug encampment. They're still trying to get to Castle Nater. So they continued on. And they came to kind of a place where they couldn't cross the map anymore. They came to the edge of the swamp where there was like deep, dark swamp water. They saw a bridge out there. And so they had to backtrack on the map. I covered a little bit of this in my Tabletop Simulator map for, I think it's Mirror of Dead Men Part 2, which actually has this map, the Bullywug map. So they kind of backtracked and went around, and they found a bridge, and they went over that bridge. And, I think I'll put a video up, you could see it there. They just had a very small kind of skill challenge. And yes, there were crocodiles below that bridge, but I didn't have any plans of ambushing them on the bridge or having any kind of ordeal. I think that is a temptation, and I think a lot of players now, they see it coming. You put a bridge, they see it coming. And so I try to avoid those kinds of things. Well, to some degree, I avoid them. It's so tempting. I always think of Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, with Indiana Jones being in the middle and those guys, a thuggy coming in. I don't know. There's something about that. Bridge scenarios are they're always kind of fun. I don't know what it is. But anyway, so they get across the bridge. There's a small little skill challenge there with a branch going across. And the branch, this is funny. The branch was totally fine. It would not have collapsed and not have broken. It was just there, someone, the Bullywugs actually had put it over the bridge so they could easily access the bridge and go back and forth, right? But to the players, it becomes an obstacle. And there was a lot of debate on like, okay, should we go through it? Can we go, hold our weight, blah, blah, blah. Storm went through it first, and then our druid transformed into a spider and put a webbing across and just kind of brought everybody across. At one point, our cleric, if you look at the map, I purposely put a branch above where they could possibly swing across. They could throw a grappling hook and get that rope and, go right across the thing. Whether the rope would hold them or the branch would hold them, that was another thing. And our cleric actually had the idea of doing that. She threw it up there, and of course she tested it before she went flying across, and the branch broke. It just, it was random die. She just didn't get a good one. So she kind of left it as is, and they had the spider bring her across. So really, the first part of the adventure was combat. Immediately, they're dealing with the Bullywugs. The Bullywugs are leaping all over the place. And they had a pretty good encounter. It wasn't super deadly, but it was a little bit challenging. Now, the biggest thing that happened this night, that went on for a long time in a good way, not a bad way, but it went on for an hour, I think an hour and a half, maybe two, was the next encounter. An encounter that I really thought wasn't going to happen. Let me explain. Let me put a picture up here. Here's the next map, all right? There's the long bridge they come up to that's got giant arches, all right? And so the bridge is going on and on and on and on and on and on and on, right? It's just going and going. Sometime had built this bridge in the swamp. And there's a reason for this. If you go into the book, there is some lore about the castle. And right at the beginning of the chapter, I think, when you look at chapter 6, talking about Castle Nater. So I took some of that lore. I don't know. Is that a cool effect? If you're in 3D, this must be awesome. I took some of that lore, and I decided, hey, okay, so maybe they built this to make product and goods coming from the outside world into the swamp a little bit easier, right? So I'm just thinking, I don't know, lore stuff at the time. But I put these, the bridge in, right? So they're doing fine. They're doing great. Well, if you look at the map, off to the left, there's a ship. I'll say pirate ship, right? But it wasn't really a pirate ship, but it was a ship, right? And at one time when I was designing the map, I said, you know what, this looks cool. I just wanted to put like a sunken ship out there. But then as soon as I did that, I was kind of layering it, putting it in, setting the lighting, putting the mist in, I realized if I do this, someone might want to investigate that. So I came up with a little bit more lore for that, mixed in with the actual lore of the Forgotten Realms, what happened in the swamp there, and set some items out there. Just kind of did, I would dare say, basic things for it, just in case, just in case that was going to happen, right? Well, I didn't think it was going to happen. I really thought there was a moment where they come under the arches and the cleric goes, ooh, points out to the ship, and she's like, hey, there's a ship out there. All right, and of course now everybody's like perception checking, like, can I see anything? Well, the thief, who always his perception checks are just so ridiculously high. He's like God with glasses. I mean, it's just like, bing, I see it. He does a perception check, and of course, for a moment, he sees the glitter of steel. Something is sticking out of the swamp near the edge of the pirate ship. And he said, oh, okay, all right. And that's all that came of it. I thought, all right. Okay, no one's going to do anything. So they come to the bottom of this next arch, and you'll see it in the map. They come down, and it hits the water, right? So nobody wants to get in the water. Well, the druid is still a spider, so she starts to make the webbing across, right? It's going to only take like a minute or two for her to do it, but then she has to ferry everybody across, right? So she's down there. Everybody's kind of a little bit separated, watching the sides of the bridge. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they hear a splash. The thief just flung himself over the bridge into dark, murky swamp water. And he goes hightailing it for the boat. And I thought to myself, oh boy, okay, here we go. Because that night I actually had something planned. A bridge encounter, right? So like, the infamous bridge encounters. Well, I did have something planned, but then it was optional. You want to put cool stuff in, but there must always be options. They can avoid it. They can negotiate with it, or they can destroy it, right? Like there's the top 3 things you can do, right? But always kind of build in those options. You don't want to force things. Sometimes you do for drama, but you don't want to force everything, right? So he just jumps into the water. And swamp water is not necessarily even. I mean, you got pits, you got valleys, you got places where the swamp water, the swamp itself has come upwards, the terrain has come upwards and down. Well, the ship, of course, was in a huge, deep part of that water, but it wasn't super deep when he jumped off, right? So he almost hurt himself. But he goes leaping off and starts swimming out there. Storm sees it. Everybody else at the table is like, oh, God. And so Storm says, okay, I'm not going to let him go by himself. So he jumps in as well. And the thief is a good ways out ahead of him. Well, what do you think? I mean, what's going to happen now, right? Like, this awakens something, right? And of course it does. It awakens 6 crocodiles. There should have been more, and there actually are more. But it awakens 6 crocodiles immediately, and all 6, not just regular crocodiles, we're talking giant crocodiles that were just there at the surface, just waiting, waiting for prey, and they all go after him immediately as he's going for the swamp. Going for the ship. So he is going for the ship. 6 crocodiles come out of nowhere. I kind of spread them around the map just so they weren't like all like clustered together. They wouldn't be doing that. They're kind of separated out. And of course, Storm is out there too. So about 3 or 4 of them are going for the thief, while the other 2 or 3 are going for Storm. And it kind of took everybody by surprise. And of course, at that moment, the whole night changed. I mean, it was like good an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours of combat that was skin of the teeth kind of stuff. The thief, his armor class will suffer after this. That's for sure. He's going to be dropping probably about -1, -2 on his armor class because he had some pretty brutal encounters with the giant crocodiles that repeatedly grappled him. Every time they bit, they would nail down, bite, crunch, and at one point there was 2 of them that had him grappled. He was in really bad shape towards the end of this. Now, he's still alive. He took a lot of hits to jump the gun here. He's still alive, but his armor class is going to suffer. Those crocodiles have destroyed a lot of his armor. But regardless of that, this activates everybody on the bridge. And the problem is nobody wants to get in the water. Who wants to jump in the water? I mean, nobody does. So everybody is trying from the bridge, and there's not a lot of ranged characters here, are trying to figure out how to get to them and how to save them from the crocodiles. Well, it's a good hour of them going back and forth. Now, luckily, cantrips are firing off. Mortimer, a ranger, finds himself a spot on the bridge and goes, pew, pew, pops some arrows out there, and they're all trying to do the best they can. The druid, who is still a spider at this point, sends out Althea, the pixie, next to Storm to help cover him. And, she's got a little bow and arrow. She can't do too much with that, especially the crocodile's hide. She's not going to be able to do a lot with that, but she does fire a few off. Matter of fact, the funny thing is, all the crocs died, okay? So we'll just put it that way. All the crocodiles died. But it was Althea. I'm sorry, not Althea. The Clover, the pixie, who always got the last hit. I think out of 3 or 4 out of the 6, she was the last one to attack and nailed each one of them. Just direct hits. And, she just like, boop, boop, boop. I mean, her kill count was just going up. Which is, they only hit for like 1 or 2 hit points. So it was like, she just barely killed these things. But anyway, so they're trying their best to cover them. And the long story short, Storm and the thief were constantly being bitten down, attacked, and dragged underwater. The thief kind of worked his way towards the ship and tried to get up on the ship. And at one point, he had 3 crocodiles all around him, biting, and one that went under and was trying to pull him down into the murky water. It was just nasty. It was not good at all. And the cleric was trying to shoot off cantrips, missed quite a few of them, was trying to do her best. Just a whole bunch of stuff was going on. And then suddenly, things are, the crocodiles are doing their stuff. They're trying to bring them back in. The crocodiles, one at a time, are starting to sink. They're starting to be killed. Something else happens. Now, this is the encounter that I actually had planned. And it activated because of them jumping in the water and the screaming and the combat, right? So everything is like on this really high crescendo. There's just, oh my gosh, how are we going to get these guys out of the water? They're just barely killing the crocodiles. The thief is taking a massive amount of hits, and I really thought he was going to die. I thought, wow, this is it. He died going after, a sword he saw and some glitter of gold underneath the surface of the water. And there is stuff there. Don't get me wrong. There is stuff there. Well, Mortimer was shooting. I had him do a perception check. And on the next round, as he was bringing his bow down, he heard something right below him. He looks down, and from under the bridge, he sees 2 antennae come up and giant centipedes enter the fray. 7 of them. And it came out of nowhere. Like that was the plan there. That was the optional combat that was going to happen. The giant centipedes were under the bridges sleeping. They were just kind of nesting there, but even when they were walking across, it really didn't make that much noise. The centipedes weren't as interested, but all the noise that was happening afterwards, the crocodiles and the slashing and the combat and the screaming and the spells going off, alerted them big time, and the whole swarm came to life. And they weren't too sure at first there was going to be any more. Because here comes the centipede. Mortimer's got like a giant centipede right in front of him suddenly coming out from the side of the bridge. Both him and the cleric attack it and do kill it. They see this huge body fall into the swamp. And then Frulam, who had borrowed a crossbow from the cleric so she could at least do something, she could at least hit long range, tied a rope around the side of the bridge, and she kind of shimmied her way down to see, crossbow out, kind of shimmy down to see, is there any more coming our way? So she kind of comes down, looks under the bridge, and all these eyes light up, just all of them, and she freaks out and comes back up the rope and screams out, all of them are here. All of them, right? Every giant centipede possible. And it's true. There was a good about 7, possibly 8 of these things. I don't want to give it all away, but there's quite a few underneath the bridge itself. So it's not over. It's not over. At this time, you got to remember, the thief is in the water. Storm is in the water about halfway to the thief. And the druid is still in spider form. Everybody else is up on the bridge. And now they have those 2 guys to worry about. And then also creeping and crawling out from the left and right side of the bridge now are these huge, giant centipedes that still have to deal with. This is kind of where we ended. They finally did get rid of the crocodiles. Matter of fact, Althea, our druid, came up with a pretty cool idea. She actually could summon creatures. I'm not sure what the spell is. I'm not going to get into that, but she could summon some creatures. So she summoned, I think, 6 crocodiles or 4. Maybe it was 4 giant crocodiles. And those crocodiles attacked the other crocodiles that were attacking the thief, dragging them away from the thief so he could get free. It was a little comical. But I have to say, there was at least 14 separate enemies on the board, not counting characters, that I was, well, if you count the 6 centipedes, there was 20 that I was dealing with. And I have to say, can I toot a horn here? I was doing really damn good at keeping track of everything. With hunter marks going off and grappling here and grappling there, and this crocodile grappling that crocodile, that crocodile grappling the thief, and that thief grappling the crocodile, and the crocodile over here grappling. I mean, it was just like, I can't believe when I look back on it that I actually did really well. I mean, that's the only thing. That's the only accolade, let's throw some confetti. That's the only thing I'm going to give myself, is that I actually kept track of everything. I mean, I just can't believe it. And it was kind of fun. It was actually a really, really fun evening. And I think the reason why sometimes combat can be boring, right? Sometimes because you're just waiting your turn and you're going to do your thing, especially when your DM screen is loaded with enemies. And I look at that sometimes and go, ugh, if you go first or last, it kind of sucks. You're just, especially if you miss, you got to wait a long time. Well, I don't know. That night, it was fun. And I think it was because of the peril. When there's great peril involved, and there's a sense of strategy. Okay, I'm here, they're there, what can we do? It actually heightens, it enhances the combat. So, throwing the bullywugs together, the first part, dry land, they're all next to each other. Okay, it was fine, serviceable combat. But it was the situation that made the combat really, really interesting. Because, one would say combat's combat. Well, no, it can be fun. It can be when you start to strategize and you have these major complications happening between players and enemies and environment, this wonderful little triangle, it really becomes something. So that's why I think there's, if you're DM, you're running this, you want to put great importance on the map, how it's set up, where people are at, where those monsters in place, the options involved, and and just kind of make that combat interesting as the best you can, and really give it some thought. So it was really entertaining. It was very, very fun. I didn't want it to end. I was kind of, one of our players had a really early morning, so it was fine. We had to get some sleep, so he was kind of checking out, and it's totally fine. I get it. But we had finished destroying the crocodiles, and that's when the centipedes now were taken over. And again, now that that's happening, we still got 2 players stuck out in the water, and about 4 left on the bridge, and not in a very good situation. And they're about to be surrounded by giant centipedes, and one of them over there is turned into a spider, which is probably fine, probably going to be okay. So it's still, as we pick up, not this Friday, but the next one. I don't know, it's December something. It's going to be interesting to see how this kind of unfolds, because, I've increased the centipedes' hit points. Not necessarily their armor class. I think their hide, their armor is fine, but, kind of up that stuff. But it'll be interesting to see how they handle these things, because they're huge. They're huge, long, and there's a lot of them. So we're going to see how this goes. So I think that's really the basics of things that happened that evening for our last session. It wasn't a lot of things story-wise. They're still trying to make their way to the castle. I'm not even going to try to say it. The castle. But, they're trying to get to Cricket, trying to save him and stuff. But, it was really just 2 combats that happened that evening. They're still trying to get to the swamp. So anyway, it was fun. That's all I can say. It was fun. Now, granted, if you are running Chapter 6 right now, these are all random things. I don't think you even have to do some of this stuff. I've heard it said before, and I think it's true. The swamp can be its own adventure in itself. There are so many things you can do in the swamp that could, not necessarily derail the campaign, but they could spend a ton of time in there doing all kinds of things. So my next step is to kind of, we want to shorten this. We don't want to spend forever in the swamp, but the challenge was to make the swamp, the environment, different. I mean, what's the difference between going out in the wilderness being attacked by gnolls or whatever? What's the difference between that and the swamp? There's got to be a feeling of danger, an extreme feeling of danger, because you're completely out of your element. So the plant life, the terrain, the bugs, the giant crocodiles, the other things that are squirming and moving around the swamp, it needed to feel lethal. And that's what I think I was trying to do. There are some encounters. There are going to be some encounters. And there's even more random encounters that possibly could happen, because you want that area to feel deadly. It has to feel like you know what? When we're done with the swamp, I'm not going back, right? So they know, now all the characters and the players will know when they look at that map again, what happened in that swamp and how dangerous it is. And you know what? I never want to go back there. You know, if it's all said and done, I do not want to go back. So that's the kind of feeling and I'm trying to push for the swamp. Again, I'm not trying to kill my players, but I want it to feel lethal. So that is the campaign diary, guys. I hope it, I don't know, this is 25 minutes. Okay, well, you're trying to keep these things short, but how do you, I don't know, how do you condense 4 hours into just like 10 minutes? Though I would say I'm pretty successful in doing that when I do my last times on Hoard the Dragon Queen, my little short videos. Maybe that's the way to go. Anyway, so we'll be playing the next week, and we'll pick up right where they left off. There's a few more things I want to do, but then we get to the castle Natiar, the big old green castle in the swamp, and then we'll see where it goes from there, and then we'll be into Chapter 6. I think right now we're about 4 sessions into Chapter 6. Again, this may not happen to you. You may get it done in 2. You may get it done in maybe 3. 3 is about average. 2 to 3, I'd say 3. 3 sessions per chapter is about where I'm sitting so far in Hoard of the Dragon Queen. But we should be hopefully next 2, maybe 3 at the most, which means it'll be about 5 or 6 sessions into Chapter 6. And hopefully we'll be done and then go to 7 and then finally 8. And this first part, the first book, will finally be finished. And I'll get the chapter tips out and all that kind of stuff. We'll see how this goes, guys. We'll see how this goes. I'm excited. I'm kind of excited to get to the end of the book, too, because I kind of want to break, you know, just somewhere in there, kind of want to break. But anyway, guys, that's it. We played 2 weeks from now, and I'll be sure to put that up. The next cutscene is being worked on as it right now, and I think what I'll try to do is record the process of me recording the process to show you what I'm doing. I'm trying to think of ideas of what I want to do. I kind of had an idea a couple weeks ago, but it changed into the Blades of the Brotherhoods, which you can see on the channel, which actually was, I think is a fun cutscene to do, radio drama. So I'm working on the next one, and I think I'm going to start introducing the new NPCs, you know, the next step in the story. And if you're playing this and you're running it, you know who I'm talking about. So we're going to get there. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for keeping up with the Hoard of the Dragon Queen campaign diaries. And we'll be back in about 2 weeks. And till then, I'll be uploading just a couple other things. I got another map to show through Tabletop Simulator. There's actually about 3 or 4 more maps, but I'll be putting up another one, and then we'll start working on the radio dramas and the next campaign diary. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.